For whatever reason, my GeForce Shadowplay recording software was still not working this morning. I figured that there would be an update and it would have fixed it over the weekend, but it might be a problem on my end, so I'm going to have to look into that today to try to fix it. So today we're still going to be just doing pictures of the trades, and we're going to see how they work out. To start with, on my day, I went to Stock Market Watch and I looked through the top gaining stocks and the top losing stocks, and I looked through mainly the top gaining stocks for the volume, and I looked for volume that's around 50,000, and up. Anything lower than that, it feels too slow for me. I also looked at the float on these stocks, and I got rid of anything that I was looking at that was less than a million float. I prefer to have, above 10 million float, so it's less volatile and it follows the trends better. But there weren't many, actually. There were only two that were even above 10 million. So I just had to work with what I had. And after picking out the stocks that met my criteria, this was my watch list. So I started off the day with TBLT. If you look in the pre-market hours, there was a lot of consolidation along this level right there. And right before it skyrocketed up to create the pre-market high. And then right as the market opened, it just fell all the way off back down towards those support lines. And then it recovered a little bit back up to the 50 MA, and then it fell back down again. And right as it falls back down there, it actually hits that support line that was really validated in that pre-market area. And then if you look there, the 200 MA is also coming through right along that support line. So this created a lot of confluence, and I knew it was a high probability setup. So I would have actually taken it right there. And if you look at how it played out in this next picture, it jumped right up just as I thought it would. I would have taken profits right around as it touched that 20 MA line. So that would have been a pretty good trade right there. So the next trade I looked at was TROV. It was kind of consolidating between these two support and resistance lines. And it eventually broke down through that support line. And it pulled back up into it. And it was a really small break. So I wasn't sure if it was a breakout or just a false breakout. So I decided that as soon as it started forming a red candle and validated that downtrend line that I drew there, I was going to go ahead and take a short position there. But it never did, and actually the next picture, it played out and it went up back towards this new trend line that I have drawn here that it validated a few times in the past, and it was also hitting the 200 moving average. So I decided here that if it started forming a red candle, I was definitely going to take a position here once it validated that trend line. And I was pretty sure that with the lower lows that it was forming within that consolidation, that it would be able to break the support line on this play right here. And as you can see on this next picture, it actually did bounce there, and it downtrended a little bit. It broke below that support line, and then it went and tested that resistance trend again. And then it kind of broke through it. I wasn't sure if it was a false breakout or not. It still had the 20 MA overhead in that now new resistance line. But it was moving so slowly, I just didn't trust it to actually, continue the momentum and continue going down. So right there as it broke that trend line, I probably would have sold. If I was being a little more, aggressive, I could have set my stop loss a little higher. But I was already up with profits, and I didn't really want to risk it going against me, and it was just moving so slow. There wasn't a lot to gain in the first place, so I would have just went ahead and taken my profits right there. And on its final move, it broke above that 20 MA and that resistance line. So it probably would have hit a stop loss there. If it had, I would have probably broke even on the trade with commissions. And it still didn't break above the 200 MA or the 50 MA, so if I was being a little more, patient with this trade, I could have put my stops above those. But it was moving so slowly, I kind of just wanted to get out of this trade pretty quickly to get into something else. This one was another 200 MA play on AQB. If you see in the pre-market hours, it created this support line for a little while. And then just before the trade entry, it also used it as a resistance line. So I was pretty sure that it was a good resistance level. And if you see, the 200 MA came right through that resistance line as well. So it was another high probability setup. So I would have taken it on that first red candle that it formed. And I would have looked to sell somewhere around those, 50 moving average lines or the 20 moving average line, or possibly, depending on, the momentum, I might have tried to sell it at that lower support line as well. And as you can see, it did get rejected by that 200 SMA, so on my short position here, I would have probably taken my profit somewhere around that 50 EMA line as it, bounced off that and pulled back a little. Maybe in the future I would have held it a little longer, because as you can see, it did break through that level and go down to the lower support line. But I think I would have played this a little more conservatively. So I watched PTE for a while here. I saw that it, had a pre-market low right there, that white line, and then the 200 MA came through that as well. Perfectly came through it. So I did not actually see this one as it hit it. I wish I had, because if I had, I would have jumped in that for sure. It was perfect, and it shot right up to that last resistance line, and that would have been a great profit and an easy trade. It then began to bounce off that resistance line and back down towards the 200 MA. And in the next picture, the 20 MA is coming down through that 200 MA, and I wasn't sure how it was going to react to that. Most of these 200 MA trades I've taken so far have been pretty clean. So I didn't take this one yet. I wanted to see how it was going to react to that 20 MA. And it did slowly climb up through that 200 MA. It was still holding it. And I noticed a little trend line here. And I considered taking, a long position on this third bounce on that trend line after it bounced up through that 20 MA. But if you look overhead, that yellow 50 MA was coming through, and I had just a big feeling that it was going to bounce off that line, and the percent for profit between the bounce off that 200 MA and the 50 MA was only like 1.5% or 2%. So I felt like that for me was a pretty easy trade to take, but the profits weren't that great. And in order to take this, I would have had to set my stop loss below that pre-market low support down there. And it would have been, profits would have been, a 0.5 to a risk of 1 trade. So it just wasn't worth the trade to me. But I still watched it just to see how it would react for future reference. And it did just what I thought. It bounced through that 20 MA, and then it got rejected by that 50 MA. So I'm glad I stayed out of this one. So next up was AXGT, and it was trading perfectly between this range for a long time. And I noticed that it had an impulsive sell-off from the resistance line very quickly down to that support line. And when things happen that quickly, they usually tend to reverse. But if there's too much momentum, they can break out. So I watched this one pretty closely, and it didn't look like it was going to break out. So once it hit that lower support line, I would have taken my position right there. And as you can see, it bounced off that support line just like I thought it would. It went up and touched that 200 MA, and right as it did, I would have covered my position right there and taken my profits. It was pretty clear to me that it was going to bounce off there. If you look over to the left, it was holding that 200 MA just really strongly. So yeah, that would have been just a quick and easy profits. I would have set my support line, a little bit below that support line, just in case. But I mean, it would have been a good risk-to-reward ratio. And it was just a good trade overall, so I was really happy with it. I took a few more trades today, but they were, not as big profits. I didn't actually lose any of those trades, but this video is getting pretty long already, so I didn't want to show everyone. But yeah, I saw today that, a lot of confluence with the 200 MA, and I'm definitely going to add that, to one of my big strategies. It worked really well. Every time I saw it do it, it bounced. So yeah, I'm definitely going to start looking for those more regularly. But I appreciate it. I hope you like and subscribe, and catch me on my next video.